Hello, everyone. Thanks for taking the time to switch on and listen to this latest episode. I have with me today somebody who was one of our trainees. I'm very pleased to say she is no longer a trainee. I have Claire Cross with me. Claire, thanks ever so much for giving up some time on what is probably the hottest afternoon of the year so far.
Absolutely.
Yes, but as you've already mentioned on Facebook this morning, very envious of you. You've been to the local ice cream parlour with your learner this morning. So,
Had to be done.
well, yes, I suppose so. Right. Now, the main reason why I've got you on here, of course, is that you are a relatively recent Part 3 success. But there were sort of one or two hiccups on the way before you got there. So I always think it's good for anybody who is doing the training process to actually realize that it can be a little bit challenging and take some time. So it'd be worth exploring some of that before we go into the what you did to actually ultimately succeed.
No problem.
Let's go right the way back then to the work that you were doing, the establishment that you weren't banned from, where Christy and I have been today to meet a new trainee. Tell us your background.
Okay, so yeah, I was a chef, stroke manager, stroke general dog's body at a local pub to me. Am I allowed to say the name? Or actually, I'm not going to say the name because they barred me. So I'm not going to say the name. Just in case anybody's wondering why I got barred from a pub, I wasn't fighting. I wasn't being rowdy in any way.
Drunk? You weren't drunk?
No, wasn't drunk. Literally just trying to help them out one time. But anyway, beside the point. So anyway, I used to work there, and I was working about 60 hours a week. So really long weeks, just trying to make ends meet and things. And I also have rheumatoid arthritis. Okay, so actually, my joints were not liking me very much for doing 60 hours a week. So I looked into becoming a driving instructor. It's something I had looked at when I was much younger, actually, in my 20s. It's something I had considered a long time ago.
Well, about 5 or 6 years ago, you mean?
Absolutely, Kev. I love you. So yeah, quite a little, just a little while ago. So it's always been something that's been in the back of my mind, and I thought, you know what? Why not? Let's just go for it. Okay, give it a go. And I wanted to. I was looking at lots of different companies in terms of how to start the training, and obviously I looked at some of the big companies, and there was a very large outlay of money. Was the main thing. And I
Yeah.
was like, I've still got bills to pay. I've still got to work. I wanted something that was going to work around me, something that I could do like on my days off, something so that I can manage the training around that. So that's why I chose to come with you and Christy to Training Wheelz because it worked for me. You know, I could train when I wanted
Right.
to, around what I was already doing, and I could pay as I go as such as well. So
Yeah.
it wasn't a huge
Yeah.
outlay initially. So that's what I did. Met up with you. Believe I spoke to you, didn't I, Kev, on the phone and things. Liked the sound of you. Okay. Little did I know
God,
at that point.
dear. Oh, quite mad full. And you still stayed
Yeah,
with us even
still
when you
stayed
met
with
me.
you. Yeah. And then yeah, met with you and Christine. Liked both of you. Liked what you were
Yeah.
offering. Asked some questions. You answered them, and yeah, it worked perfectly for me. So that's when I started my training with you.
I always think when people say I ask some questions and obviously you've got some answers, it takes me back to Yes Prime Minister when Jim Hacker used to say, "Oh, well, you answered my questions," and Humphrey Appleby said,
Oh, Kev,
"Oh,
I
I'm
am
glad
far
you
too
thought
young for
so."
yes, Prime Minister. I'm sorry. You-
Ah, but it's the irony of thinking that the answers he'd given were actually the ones that were correct. Anyway, we obviously did give you the answers that you wanted to hear.
Yep, at that time, I think, yeah, I wasn't sure what questions I wanted to ask,
No,
to be fair, at that time. And I think that you don't.
no, quite.
I think once you get into the industry, you know
Yeah,
more about which
yeah,
questions you should ask. But I think anyone who's looking to get into it, possibly speak to some other people that are
Yeah.
already in the industry and ask them what
Yes.
questions to ask, because you don't
Yeah.
know, you just don't know. Because I thought it was going to be almost a quick thing. For
Yeah.
me, I was like, let's start the training and get through part one, do the theory, get through the part two, and then, yeah, just whiz on. I'll have this done in 8 months' time. No, that's not how it worked,
No,
you know?
sadly.
So almost 2 years. Yeah.
Gosh, does it
So I
take
think
that long?
yeah, it did take me that long, you know? So I had challenges along the way. So yeah, so it can take longer, it can take shorter. It depends what you put into it.
Yeah. Yes, because I've just been messaging somebody
Yeah.
on Facebook this morning who's asking for advice as to what to do and how quickly you can get through. And I said, well, once you've passed the part one, you're probably going to look at an absolute minimum of
Yep.
6 months, total minimum. And that's if you manage to get a part two test within 3 months. Because the only way you can do it is this book to hold scheme. Then the same, assuming you pass that first time, the earliest you'll get a part
Right.
three test again by the book to hold scheme is probably another 3 months. You know, you'd be because we've just had one um, of Christie's who's got a date, was given a date this week
That's it.
for mid-October, and
Yep.
he's been waiting a month, been on the book to hold, so that would be a total of 3 months wait. You know, so yeah, it's and you've got to get through it first time then as well. So yeah, you're right. It's not a quick fix at all.
Yeah, it's you may think you can get through it in a certain amount of time, but there's other factors. There's a DVSA, you've got no control over that,
No,
unfortunately. So yeah,
that's
so
right.
you may be
Yeah,
waiting longer than you think's expected. You know, and actually I got through part one really quickly, and part two I passed first. Yep. And part two I passed first time as well, but part three I found challenging. Okay, so sorry, say the question again for me, Kev.
yeah. But so you know, what is it about that you felt about your driving that you know? I take it you were reasonably confident when you went for the
Yeah,
part two
absolutely.
test. You know, what was it you were doing that you felt, yeah, I'm doing these things right, even before you got there?
Um, I think because in myself, I always felt like I was a pretty safe, pretty confident driver. And
Yeah,
then I spent the time with Christy, who pulled me up on some things that I'd got slack on. And I think that's what we tend to
right.
do is we come into it thinking, I'm a
Yeah,
brilliant driver. I know exactly what I'm doing. Um, and then it's not until you have a trained professional sitting next to you going, why are you not checking your left mirror? Because that's one of those things that I've
yeah,
noticing other drivers like in family and things like that. That left mirror just drops out of the way and things. So yeah, just having someone else looking at it from an unobjective perspective
yeah,
just really helped me just tune in to what I needed to
yeah.
do. And then every time I went out for a drive, it became a very conscious drive rather than me just
Good. Yeah,
driving for the sake of driving.
yeah,
Um, it was still
yeah.
nerve wracking going to that part two
Oh, sure.
test,
Yeah,
absolutely. But yeah, I just felt confident in myself, and I think that's all you can do. Feel confident and drive how you normally drive in a way, but better.
yeah. But that normal drive has become what it should be for the part two, and that's how
Yeah,
you're driving
yeah,
all the time,
yeah,
and it's got to be.
completely. And
Driving at that
I think
standard.
even now when I'm out driving on my own, I'm still thinking about driving at that level. You know,
Yeah,
because as instructors, we don't drive as much because all your pupils are doing the driving.
yeah, yeah,
So I found that I do have to consciously drive sometimes when I'm driving myself. So it's just
yeah,
keeping that level up.
yeah. Yeah, and I find sometimes when I sit in the back of a part three session and the training instructor is driving to the venue, the location because the roads are too tricky, that sometimes that they do slip, you know, say, come on, that's got to be
Yeah.
a part two standard
Yeah.
drive. Yeah. Right. So we got through both of those, and then we came to the wonderful part
Your
three.
wonderful part three. Absolutely. So I went on pink license in June last year.
Right. Yeah.
And then I think I had my first part three in the October.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yep. So first part 3, October. Um, and at that point, I felt I was ready for it. To be fair, I'd done a lot of work with Christy. I had some pupils that I was teaching. And yeah, I didn't feel too bad. I was nervous, obviously.
Yeah,
I knew that I wasn't A grade standard, but I felt okay about it. And chose to take my son. So I'd be teaching him. I knew that he was going to be available, otherwise he was
yeah.
going to be out on his ear and didn't have anywhere to live if he didn't come with me. So he
So
was
if I
told
can just
that
stop you there for a moment. Sorry to interrupt. So you choose to take? What was the reason you chose to take your son over any of the learners you had?
availability was one of them. I
Right.
knew I could
Yeah.
rely on him.
Yeah.
Okay. I
Right.
also knew that I could talk to him really well and he would talk back to me really well.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah. Fine.
Now,
Yeah.
that was my reasoning. Okay. We went out for a drive. Obviously, we've been driving before. So we went out for a drive a few days before. And I recognised that his MSPSL was all out of sync, especially when it came to coming up to junctions when they're in close
Right.
proximity.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
that whole system was going out. So that was kind of my focus, MSPSL, and it wasn't specific enough. And also, when we went on the test, my nerves got the better of me, which I
Yeah.
think they can do. I
Yeah.
couldn't keep them in check. And when I get nervous,
Right.
I
Yeah.
talk. Just anything comes out of my mouth. So in that part 3 test, I just talked.
Right.
I did all the talking. My poor son barely got to say a thing. And as I was told by the lovely John O'Brien, I
Yeah.
mothered him. So in retrospect, taking my son, although it had bonuses,
Yeah.
worked against me because yeah, it was a mum and son in the
Heard
car, and
very
yeah,
similar story when Vicky with a Y took her son, had the same thing, and then Vicky with an I didn't take her daughter to test because she'd passed by then. But I sat in on some sessions when her daughter's friends were there and were doing lessons, not the test, and they knew Vicky, and I said the same to her. You're mothering them. You know, you're
yeah,
doing the work for them. You're just making sure that you tell them what they need to do.
yeah. I
Yeah.
think it's a completely different dynamic when you've got pupils in the car that you know on a personal level. It's a really different dynamic. Yeah. So
Right.
that's where I fell down, I think,
Right.
on my first part 3. It wasn't just that. I think
Yeah.
I hadn't invested in really getting a handle on the
Right.
skills, on the
Yeah.
17 competencies. So there were some things I was really good at. Well, not really good at, I would say, average at.
Yeah.
Other
Yeah.
stuff just wasn't clicking for me. Okay. But also, I felt that because
Yeah.
obviously I'd gone into pink in June, you need to get that first part 3 in before that pink has run out. So I had to get it booked. I
Sure.
had to take, and knowing
Yeah.
the waiting time for part 3 tests, I had to take that test, even though yeah, I kind of felt ready, but I wasn't ready. In retrospect, I know I wasn't ready at all. So yeah, so that one, yeah, crashed and burned. Okay, so I came
Well,
back.
having just coming, sorry to interrupt you again. Just coming in there, I don't want people to think that taking a family member
A
is
bad thing. It can be a good thing.
so. Yeah, because Jason
Yep,
took his son, and who was a full license holder. So that's another sort of thing that's very often put up as a red flag. If you don't normally take full license holders, why would you do it to a part 3 test? So he's taken his son, who
yep,
was already a full license holder, and he passed. But I do know Christy did a lot of work with him to make sure that the son was doing the work and the talking
absolutely.
far more than he was. So it can work, but very often it is the experience that you had.
Yeah, I think you just need to adjust your instructing style. It's the same if you do take a full license holder, isn't it? You need to adjust your instructing style. That's what it comes down to. If you're prepared to do that, of course you can make it work.
So we move on to the next one.
So we move on to the next one. So I obviously came back from that one, rebooked on hold straight away. Okay. And then got a date for January.
All right.
Okay. And I actually postponed that date. I gave that date to one of our other instructors within Training Wheelz because I, in myself, I didn't feel I was ready again.
So by now you have your first trainee license has expired.
Yeah, so my first trainee license
Yeah.
expired on the 4th
Yeah.
of December, so just before Christmas.
Yeah.
Because I had booked my first one within the first pink license and booked my second one immediately after failing my first
Right.
part three. I got granted a second pink license straight away. I didn't need to appeal or anything because I had done everything as quickly as I can within the
Yeah.
time frame.
Yes, and the fact if you'd done the required hours and informed them about that, they're all in. Yeah, you do tend to get it. It's those people who don't get all the paperwork done that tend to struggle with that second one. So we move on. We get another date that. So you applied for a second trainee license. Got a date in January, which you actually said you moved because you didn't feel ready.
Yeah, so yeah, I didn't feel ready. I felt that although I was working nice and closely with Christy and we were working on elements of my instructing that needed work
Yeah.
within the 17 competencies, I still felt that I wasn't quite there.
Right.
So I swapped it and rearranged my second part three in March. This time I felt so much more
Yeah.
ready. I'd been working with Christy. Obviously, I've been using the Go Green content as well. So
Yeah.
going on the Zooms
Yeah.
with them, using the Go Green content. The other thing I did as well was the Inspire instructor
All
training
right.
with Phil and
Yeah.
Diana as well. So I've been doing stuff with them as well. So I got them to review a lesson for me. And yeah, just spent a lot of time, not just in the car, but trying to fill in gaps in my knowledge and trying to understand what was expected of
Right. So
me and what I needed to do.
so basically, you were being quite proactive and not just sitting back and waiting for it to
Yeah,
happen. Yeah. Yeah.
I think you
Excellent.
have to be. You have to
Yeah.
be. It's whether you're doing 3 hours a week in a car with pupils, whether you're doing 20, there's only so much knowledge you can gain from being in a car with
Yeah.
pupils.
Yeah.
You need to invest the time to improve your own knowledge, invest the time in finding out how other people deal with things.
Yeah. And
And
also, I suppose finding there's so much potential support out there, and you could spend hundreds of pounds going on courses and everything. It's finding out what
yeah,
works for you as well. I think
absolutely. It's
really.
finding out what works for you
Yeah.
and finding out the people that you connect with, I think is the other thing as
Yeah.
well.
Yeah.
Because there's some trainers out there who are
Yeah.
brilliant trainers, but maybe don't speak on the same level as you. You don't quite get them.
Yeah.
Whereas other trainers you will, you'll just automatically connect with.
I've had exactly that
Yeah,
conversation with another trainer this morning, who wants me to go and just do a session with one of her PDIs
yeah,
because she's feels she's hit a brick wall with what she's done. She just wants to see if somebody else can just see what with somebody else, whether it's. I'm not going to say I'm any better. I won't be, but it might just be different.
that's it. And sometimes different works. And I think we have to think
Yeah.
that same way with our pupils as well, don't we? It's like
Yeah. Oh,
sometimes we can
yeah.
work really well with our pupils, but you might get to a point where you go, actually, this isn't working anymore. So you have to
Yeah.
go, maybe somebody else will work better for you because you see it in a different way, you connect in a different
Yeah.
way. So yeah, so that's how I went about the training, just trying to be proactive.
Yeah.
My husband hated me mainly because I was constantly had my nose in books. Not loads of books. I'm
Right.
not a big reader,
Yeah.
so I tried to read books. Didn't work for me so much. Zoom calls,
Yeah.
little grab videos that I was watched. I have to say that Inspire Instructor Training are really good in their videos because they're like 20-30 minutes, you can fit it nicely
Yeah.
in between
Yeah.
lessons. It doesn't take up loads of headspace.
Right.
So you don't
Yeah.
get given loads of information. You can take information, what you need, and it's actionable.
Yeah.
And it's taking those bits, and I would take bits and put them into my lessons and keep working those and see if it worked. If it didn't work, I'd try something else. And
Excellent.
yeah, and that's what I did. So kept doing that,
Yeah.
and then went to my next part 3 in the March. And yeah,
Yeah.
I felt ready for it at that point. The pupil that I chose that time wasn't someone I knew personally. She was one of my pupils
Yeah.
that I'd taken on. This pupil, lovely girl, but she has ADHD. Okay, so with her, lessons could go one way or the other. But I knew this with her. If it was a good day, it was going to be a great day. Other days, if she was feeling a bit hyper, then things would go to pot. But
Right.
I took that
Yeah.
into account and thought, we'll go for a drive before and just see how it
Yeah.
goes. Okay. And so I picked her up, and actually she was having a good day. So I'm like, right, this will be fine. On the build up to that part 3, I was so nervous about it. I was like, I've got to pass this
Wow.
time. And my brain just took over. So what I ended up doing was thinking, right, what does she need? Okay, and we'd been working on rural roads and things like that. And when it came to the part 3, I was like, right, we're going to go and work rural roads, finding passing spaces, getting kind of our speed right, and all that kind of stuff. And because I had that as the plan in my head, what I wanted to do, I then started putting my thoughts down on paper. And then I had this bit of paper, then ended up being a big plan, which I never should have done. And because I
Yeah.
then kind of had a plan, when it came to my part 3, because of the way my brain works, anxiety kicked in and I stuck to that plan.
Yeah.
Regardless of the fact that we'd done a 45-minute drive before my test, and we were around Marsh Barton area and coming into roundabouts. She was coming in too fast. We were either getting harsh stopping, or it just wasn't. We needed to work on approach speed to roundabouts. That's what we needed to do. And I recognised that. And I spoke about it with the pupil. And I said to my pupil, should we go and work on that? And she's like, no, I think I've got it. And me, I went, yeah, all right then, let's just stick with what we were going to go and do then. Now, if I'd actually gone with my gut, I think the outcome of that part 3 may have been different. Because as
Yeah.
soon as we got in the car with the examiner, first roundabout out of the test centre, exactly that. So, really abrupt braking coming into the first
Yeah.
roundabout. And I didn't address it. At that point, even though I knew that's something that was her shown need before the test, I couldn't get my head out of the plan, so I didn't
Yeah.
adapt.
Yeah. I can remember talking to Christy after it, and I said, so what would you have done? And she said, yeah, I'd have gone to right on the next roundabout, gone down at the traffic lights and come back round again and done that roundabout. And I've seen this before, sticking to what my plan is rather than what is really needed. Yeah. So you were probably in trouble with that particular part 3 after about 5 minutes.
After about 5 minutes, absolutely. And then it just ran away from me. And actually, I should have recognized that because my pupil was then struggling, I was talking more. And I think that's something that I then recognize in my own teaching. If I'm talking more, then this level isn't right for my pupil. Either the level's not right or the skill that we're working on isn't right at that time. So yeah, so that was a bit of an eye opener. Um, and yeah, and then that part 3 just ran away from me. So we carried on with the plan. And suddenly it was time to come back. And I was like, I've taught her nothing. We've learned nothing from this. We've literally driven out to Kenford, had to turn around and come back because John O'Brien's gone, right, we need to make our way back now. So
Yeah.
I knew straight away that I totally messed it up. But it's a learning
Yeah.
experience. Sure.
And finally,
Finally, the last part 3. So this one I did middle of June, so 18th of June this year. So this was a totally different kettle of fish for me. I kept on with the Zooms, with the training.
Yeah.
Again, did a workshop with Phil and Diana as well, which really helped. Checked in with them weekly, had sessions with Christy as well. Just kept working on getting those skills up. And then with my pupils, I would pick a different skill each week that I wanted to improve on, and worked on that skill to try and hone it.
A skill that you, one of your skills or the learner's
So
skills?
both actually. So obviously I'm working on the learner skills, but I would think of one of the 17 competencies where I wasn't so good at. Okay. And really focus on trying to get that right. Whether that's being the using opportunities and examples to clarify learning outcomes. Obviously I do our lessons as we normally do, but I would try and make sure that I was getting that into each lesson in some way so that it became a habit rather than me having to think about it so much. And that really helped, just to focus on one little bit rather than think of it all as a great big thing that I
Yeah,
needed to conquer. It was taking it all in little bite-sized chunks, and doing it that way. So yeah, so worked hard to do that. Um, Again, I had lots of anxiety running up to that final part
sure,
three.
because it's last chance,
Last
isn't it?
chance, absolutely. Now, something that I found really helped, you may not expect this on this podcast, but I went to the doctors. I am almost 50 years old, and got myself on HRT,
Right, right,
um, because things weren't going in.
right. Yeah,
Okay. So, got myself on HRT, and that anxiety just dropped off.
right.
Really nice. I found that I could focus a lot better. So if you do have anybody out there that's training that might be of that sort of
Yeah,
age, do you know
yeah.
what? If it's not working, try and find out why. It
Mm,
might be that
mm.
you're struggling with it. It might be another reason. So maybe look into it. So I did that. That helped my anxiety, made me focus a lot better. I chose my pupil this time. Um, so surprisingly, although she was a family friend, she was the girlfriend of my son.
Oh yes, I
So I'd been
remember this.
teaching her. Yeah. So girlfriend of my
This
son.
gets interesting as well,
Um,
doesn't it?
yes, gets very interesting. So literally about 3 weeks before my part three, they split up. Um, which when I went to pick her up for one of the lessons, that became very awkward because my son hadn't actually told me, which was even funnier. But bless her, she still agreed to do the part three, and it was still just a very professional
Yeah,
way in the car. We got on really well. We didn't talk about the personal side. It was all about the driving
yeah,
and what we needed to do. And we'd done quite a few hours. She was a nice, competent driver, but she had some very clear needs in
yeah.
terms of what she needed. And I went out with her. Christy came with me as well, so that
Well,
we could
on the
talk through
part
it.
three. No,
Not
right,
on the part three, on some of the
right.
lessons on the build
Yeah,
up, so that we could talk through what the needs
yeah,
were. So I would recognise, then speak to Christy, and Christy agreed that I was recognising the right needs. And then on the day, her need again was approach speed into roundabouts and judging the gaps.
right,
So it was a very specific skill that we
right.
needed to
Yeah,
work on. It wasn't as wishy washy, should
yeah,
I say, as
yeah,
my first
yeah,
two part threes. And by keeping it as a very simple thing that we needed to work on in a
yeah.
way, we could keep everything really focused on that. The other thing that I did was shut up. I tried to make sure, as I said, I tend to waffle,
Yeah,
I tend to talk a lot. I tried to make sure that everything that came out of my mouth was a question
right.
that Ellen then had to
Yeah,
answer. She had to come up with the solutions. She had to come up with what wasn't quite going right, how she could improve it, and how she was going to go
yeah,
ahead and do that. And that just changed my whole part three,
great.
changed the
Yeah,
whole thing because it was all about her. Then it wasn't about me at all. At the end of the day, what I did didn't make any difference. It
yeah,
was about her changing her driving. And once I realised that, going into the part three, yeah, that's where the change happened. It's not about you
Yeah.
in that 45
Mm.
minutes, it is about your learner. If you can think that, then you should be fine.
Yeah. Well, great bit of advice that is. Yeah, I'm just writing that down to make sure I put that into the notes at the end when I do actually publish this. Yeah. And you got quite a decent mark, didn't you?
Yeah, so I got 42, so just 1 point off that A grade. I
Yeah.
almost cried and could have kissed John O'Brien at the end. Told him so as well, so he kind of moved
Yeah.
back a little bit. Um, But yeah, so pleased. I must admit, during that part three, though, I did get worried at one point because we had approached one roundabout and then we'd had a learning opportunity come up from that. So we moved on a bit further and pulled up at the side. And we were talking, I was talking about it with Ellen. She was discussing things. And then suddenly John's head pops over from the back and he starts inputting. And I'm thinking, oh my goodness, what have I missed here? Should I have said this? Should I be pulling this out of Ellen? But I think he just got engaged in the lesson more than anything
Yeah.
else.
He did exactly the same with Carrie before Christmas.
Yep.
And she was quite taken aback as well, but I think it's the same thing again.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I was taken aback, but at the same time, just in that few sentences that John said, I learned so much from it as
Right.
well. So although it was a great learning thing from Ellen, I actually learned a great deal on how to deal with a couple of things down
Yeah.
within Marsh Barton that I hadn't even thought of. Um, but yeah, I now use it in my lessons going forward. So again, sometimes it can just be a sentence from somebody else, whether that's an examiner,
Yeah.
whether
Yeah.
it's another trainer. Sometimes something will just stick. Um,
Yeah.
so another thing that just stuck with me. So this I got from Ray Seagrave actually. Was so
All right.
um, for me, giving pupils their independence, I used to struggle with trying to get them to take that responsibility. And
Yeah.
something Ray said to me is like, it's like you're a parent and you're teaching your child to ride a bike. You've just got to hold the saddle and let them go. You're
Yeah.
there to,
Yeah.
and then you let go of the saddle. You're still there to catch it should you need it, but actually you've got to let them go. So that's your job as an
Yeah.
instructor. Be there to catch the saddle.
Yeah. That's exactly what Vicky with a Y,
Yeah.
as opposed to Vicky with an I, got told by Frank, her examiner on her first part three, that she needed to not so much give him the opportunity
Mhm.
to fail or make a mistake, but just to give him the opportunity to do something. Still, you've got to manage the risk. It's not the case of don't say anything and just let them plow into
Yeah.
something. Still ask them, what are you going to do here? What's your plan for this and that sort of thing. But
Yeah.
it's give them ask that question, but if you don't get an answer, then you've got to come in with something, but give them the opportunity. Say, and don't mother them.
Yeah, absolutely. It's like asking those questions. Is your hands just underneath that saddle
Yeah,
ready, isn't
that's
it?
right. Yeah,
Yeah. And
a
when they
great
don't,
analogy.
yeah.
Yeah,
And if they don't give you the answer, that's when you grab the saddle,
yes, yeah,
So,
yeah,
yeah. So that was a great bit of advice. And you get advice from everywhere. Take what works from you for you.
yeah. You're name dropping all
Sorry.
sorts of people who are thoroughly no, don't totally respected throughout
Yeah.
the ADI world in this country. So yeah, it's great that you've been getting that.
And that's it. And there are so many great trainers out there. They're there to help you. Just use them.
I haven't got. I need to get Ray on here at some point now, then to talk to him.
Absolutely. Now I've not name dropped that one.
Because when you ask people that they all say yes,
Yeah.
every one of them that's come on. Yeah, yeah. Look, that's fantastic. So now a month on,
A month on. Yep. Loving it.
good.
Yeah, really enjoying it. I've had a little bit of imposter syndrome because then you start worrying that, oh no, am I still doing it right?
Yeah,
So, and I think there was that element of once I passed that part three, not that I sat back on my laurels,
right,
but I didn't watch as many Zooms. I
right.
didn't keep that CPT
Yeah.
going. I was a bit like, I've spent so much time. I'm just going to relax and enjoy my
Yeah,
lessons.
why not? It's
Absolutely.
been very intense.
Yeah.
Yeah,
It
yeah,
is, yeah, intense for a long time. So I
yeah,
kind of took a break in a way, while still
yeah,
teaching, but almost took a break, gave myself a break. Um,
yeah.
and now I'm at that point where I was like, right, let's continue building those skills. So it's getting back into doing that CPD and setting aside time each week to do that is what my plan
Mm,
is now.
brilliant.
So I've got my lesson structure set up. I know when I'm
Yeah,
teaching, I know when I'm not, and setting that
yeah,
side time aside to yeah, do some more work on
fantastic.
myself.
Yeah. Oh, well, I hope I'm going to make sure that I send this out as something that I must listen to, because there's so many gems that you've come up with here. It's been
Bless you.
superb.
Well, I've enjoyed the process. It's been a long process, but actually, I'm glad I took the time that I did. I think it's made me a better instructor. I think if I had tried to get all three part three attempts done within a shorter amount of time, then I wouldn't have potentially got the score that I got. And I wouldn't have improved myself as much as I could do. I would then be on a green badge, trying to learn more of those skills rather than having that real core base of being good enough and then building on that.
Yeah, brilliant. Well, thank you so much for all of that. There's a lot of gems within what you've done said there. You certainly are the first one who's mentioned HRT as an
As
aid
an
to
aid,
getting through. But yeah, but it's like everything else. If it works for you, it works.
absolutely.
Yeah,
So
yeah,
yeah, so I get that in because it helped me. It might help somebody
yeah,
else. If it helps somebody
yeah,
else, go
yeah,
for it. If you're finding you're
yeah.
struggling with stuff going in and the anxiety's taking over and your mood swings are crazy, go and speak to someone. See if it helps. It might not.
Brilliant. Claire, thanks ever so much for all of that. I'm sure that, that there's a lot of information in there that, well, even if there's just one bit that somebody picks up from that, it'll help them. I've no doubt.
Absolutely.
Thank you, thank you so much for your time
Thank you
today.
so much for inviting me on,
No,
Kev, as well. Thank you.
pleasure. Right,
Thanks
thanks
then.
very
Speak
much.
soon.
Well, I'd like to thank Claire for that really interesting and insightful discussion about the part three tests she's taken and what led up to the failures and how she learnt from them, which is most important, I think. And the extra help that she's gone to look for, people like Phil Cowley and Diana at Inspire, Ray Seagrave, and as Claire says, whatever works for you, just go out there and find it. And she just didn't sit back and wait for things to come to her. So I hope you've all found that really useful, particularly if you're still struggling on the route to qualifying. So if you have enjoyed that, please give us a follow and a like. Go to the Excel Podcast website and give us a like there, and hopefully you'll be ready to listen to the next one. I have got another couple of part three successes coming on soon to give their versions of what happened onto them. Also got Vision Zero Southwest due in later in this month. So there's lots to look forward to yet. And once again, thank you for listening in and see you next time. Thanks very much.